I remember fully when I was working at the airport putting supplemental meals on the airplanes, the last ones for passengers that arrived at the last minute. No meat at the airport. People, the Hare Krishnas, people at the airport, the Hare Krishnas gathered in front of the sup room. That's where my office was, with the freezer with the meals. They were all dressed in street clothes, so you couldn't tell, and normal haircuts. So they kept trying to block me from getting to my flights. I don't know, they're playing like basketball and so on. They didn't get violent. I almost wanted to, but I wanted to avoid that. When I came back from the flights, I slipped through their blockade and put my cart back into the freezer. Then I came out to see who these people were. I spoke at length to a young woman a number of times. She said they were doing all this because I served meat to passengers. What has that got to do with anything? This was considered to them an offense. She said they took her off the streets. Well, okay. Clothed her and fed her, and chose a husband for her. Wow. She approached passengers coming off flights, mostly in uniform. She gave them her spiel about helping abandoned children get off the streets, which wasn't true, and she was very sensual and close to them as she kept herself close to them as she pinned an artificial flower on their lapels. These are military people. When they pulled out their wallet, she pulled out a large bill out of the wallet herself, maintaining her eye contact all the time. It's almost, I don't know, what weird. This is not a religion, but it is, the Hare Krishnas. She collected money not unlike another profession. I won't name what that is, and gave it all to the temple leader. She said she was better provided for then when she was on the street. She had reservations about consenting to the husband they had chosen, sight unseen, though. Marital relations were by their arrangement, she explained. All men and women slept separately, even married ones. She kept on convincing herself that this was better than street life. It was as if this was her only alternative. If you didn't keep up with the rest, especially learning their dogma, she said, you found yourself deprived of food and company. I bumped into the temple leader. I recognized him among his followers by the hypocritical, expensive, accessorized three-piece suit that he wore all the time. We talked a bit, especially about the blasphemy of meat eating. He said even Jesus did not do that. I had my answer. I asked him, what about the Passover lamb that Jesus ate every year, and the fish that he ate? He digressed into science and stated that everything was made of earth, wind, fire, and water. He wasn't going to stay on the subject. I asked, what about the periodic table of over 100 chemical elements in modern science that sent a spaceship to the moon? I asked. Well, can you imagine that with earth, wind, and fire and water? He asked me to leave. Hey, when you can argue, you win the argument, but then you get all by yourself. Matt had been listening all the time. He was a worker at the airport, worked for the airlines. All those I had been sharing my faith at the gates with others. Matt was listening quietly. Those times I had been sharing my faith at the gates with others. Matt was very, very attentive. One time I walked along with him as we both had ended our shifts, and we were both on our way home. He opened up and told me he was a Jehovah's Witness. He immediately attacked the Trinity as a false doctrine. Of course, I hadn't been talking about the Trinity. Most of the time it was just the gospel. But they have their attack system. I quoted a passage from Isaiah. For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Matt noticed that it said Mighty God, not Almighty God. Of course, there's really no difference. Yes, and what is the difference? Certainly, since there is only one God, and since he is almighty, could he not be described as mighty? And you missed the rest of the passage. It says Jesus is everlasting Father. He mumbled something I couldn't quite understand that didn't fit the context and walked off, not wanting to continue the debate any longer. When they want to find out what you have to know, see, they go after people who don't know anything, and then tell them everything they should know. But don't read the Bible. We'll tell you what's in there. You never know who's listening when you speak of Jesus. All of a sudden, Carlos can't concentrate on the job. Because of that, he almost missed the flight. I had to run down there to try to get the meat on the sandwiches on the plane and run off. Because I shouldn't have been down there because he's the one for the international license. But I didn't get on the plane, so I was okay. and left the food right there at the door so they could get it. Any case, stuff happens all the time. Where's my next assignment? Well, we had, we had a little meeting, kind of a religious meeting. We were asked to visualize everything. Okay, where is it? Yeah. The managers all came back from a management seminar. That first day back, our manager demanded all of us gather in a circle, hold hands, close our eyes, and visualize doing our jobs better. We were given a chant to say in unison. Wow, imagine that. I've had a few of those happen to me throughout the years. I suggested that I get dry ice instead. It was left off the supply truck as usual. We needed the ice to prevent the meals from going bad while they were stored in the carts. Chant or be dismissed was the order of the day, so we did without the dry ice. This was the last time I did the circle chant thing. Since it was voluntary, I opted to go right to work every day. The new corporate mysticism died a quick death. The only visualizing anyone did was the same old thing. All right. I moved on to an insurance company. I think it's because I got a lecture from one of the managers saying that some of the people there in my team, that we all delivered meals together, coordinated as a team, they were questioning me about my faith, but some didn't like my answers. But they were the ones that opened up the topic. I was usually engrossed in doing my homework for seminary classes. But they told me, well, they found some reason for me to leave. So as we keep on going, I remember going in there. Oh, yes, Cigna Insurance Company. Yes, I remember that very much. I interviewed, and because of my Christianity, she didn't want to hire me. Thought I'd try insurance for a thing. The committee of 3 voted 2-1 to hire me. Nancy, who recommended me, was terminated for unknown reasons. She went to my church. She recommended me. I was at the mercy of Pat, the one who voted me down. She was a master of mean-spirited micromanagement. Sign in and out, even on breaks. Questionable things were recorded by the girl next to me on a legal pad. Change your 6s. They need to look like C's, she said. You must greet everyone you pass in the hallway. Imagine that. See, we have these weird rules. You don't know anybody, and this is a multi-story building, and all Cigna Insurance Companies, so thousands of employees. You don't say hello to everybody. You must greet everyone you pass in the hallway. 65 bills per hour. Everyone else 55. But if I didn't, I would get reported, by the way. Stop acting like a Yankee. This is Texas. They didn't like my accent. Work was frequently thrown on the floor for me to pick up. She would just take work, instead of leaving it on my desk, she'd throw it on the floor. When my average bills an hour exceeded 100, I got a congratulatory coffee cup, and then I got accused of cheating. She didn't like my Christianity. It boils down to that. Well, it got down to her father. I was refused unemployment. I kept notes of the daily harassment and abuse at the suggestion of a coworker. She noticed what my supervisor, Pat, was doing. I submitted this evidence on an appeal to the Texas State Unemployment Commission. It was compelling enough to get a no-fault verdict. EEOC recognized the abuse, but could not proceed because they said it was not race, gender, or religion-based. It actually was. I noticed in my initial employment hearing that Pat took a dim view that I was a seminary student, because your father preached stuff. Yeah, I think he was a minister. Under management of Cigna reviewed the notes and determined that I was paranoid. Okay. Tithing and a second baptism. About this time, a friend from my church, Richard, and I were visiting Grauweiler Baptist Church before going to Berean Memorial Church every Sunday. Our participation in the Sunday school class so impressed the staff that we were both offered teaching assignments there, and there were 2 requirements. Get water baptized again, the Southern Baptist way, and don't teach about tithing from the Bible. Hang on, let me just turn the oven off. Be right back. Nothing like better cooking a lunch from yesterday and then eating it today, heated up again. Anyway, this is how you do it, though, between you tubes. So, get water baptized again the Baptist way. Were you thinking about that? And don't teach about tithing from the Bible. Really, off the wall. I get off the wall things. You'll learn as you share your faith. You get off the wall questions that don't have anything to do with anything. They knew what the Bible said about tithing and didn't want me to teach against their way of collecting money. Needless to say, I declined the offer because I wasn't willing to go against what God said in His Word to please the others, the leaders at the church. So they became a bit cold about my attendance at the church, and I soon got the message and stopped coming. You know about tithing? It's for Jews. 3 tithes. Find out what the details are. You can look at this up, and you'll find out that most churches revere the money they receive, and they want to get people to pay their 10%. But it's 10% 3 times. 2 of them every year, and 1 of them every 3rd year. And they're for a particular purpose to be sent to a given group of people. Chapter 15, I'm in permanently temporary. Well, I keep on going and finding myself always in a position where, well, do we want to hire him or do we just ignore him and let him keep coming back, ignore the rules? So, I worked at First American Real Estate Service. When I found out that my time was up, I moved on and get another assignment. Didn't have any religious experience there right off the bat. Now, Mrs. Smith, Mary's manager, my boss, Mary is my boss, called me into her office one day, and she shared with me that she was a fellow Christian, a Baptist. She told me that my conversation with others on the job was perceived as offensive to them. I asked why they had to listen to our conversations, because it was just my conversation with another person. We were all allowed to talk with one another as we worked, and all kinds of subjects were brought up. Mine was a favorite one with this woman I was sharing conversation about my faith with. She said that the rule of perception had to be followed, that if someone found your conversation, no matter what the subject, was offensive to them, even though it was not directed to them, you had to stop talking about whatever you were talking about. I responded that it was against recent Supreme Court rulings to restrict the topic of conversation like that. I said, suppose I was offended that they were offended. The offensive rule works both ways. I quietly got up and went back to work. Nothing more was made of my offensive talk about Jesus, although I lowered my voice and made sure that I wasn't overheard. Interesting. You can talk about all kinds of things out there in the open, but don't mention the name Jesus. I noted that the ones who complained about had been constantly bringing up the subject of special miraculous spiritual gifts with me, but they did not like my point of view from the Bible on what they spoke to me about. The complaining parties transferred out of Mary's department, so the coast was clear to be normal once again. See, I said that the Bible doesn't teach that the spiritual gifts were for all the time, just for a particular period of time, and then they would pass away. And I said 1 Corinthians 13, and 1 to about 8 or 9 or 10. Mary seemed to like me a lot. She was a non-practicing Roman Catholic and listened to my conversations now and again. Her husband had cancer, and it didn't look good for him, so she seemed to be interested in spiritual things for the moment. Sad to say, her interest did not quite bring her or her husband to simply trust in Jesus to save them. But she heard the gospel, and I pray that she and her husband will do that. All right. Out the door, temp job. I've done every temp job in every town, whatever the job needs without a frown. And every kind of work I've renowned, and every one-day assignment